Hi, everyone. Welcome to Travel Massive. This is our live show from Toronto. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Christina. I am the co-organizer rather, for the Toronto chapter. And today we are talking about SEO and how to drive more traffic to your website, particularly using keyword search planning. We all want to know, how can we rank better on Google and rank higher among all that saturation of info out there? How can we get seen and get in front of the right people? It's going to be a jam-packed session, so thank you for spending the next hour with us. Before we get started, don't forget we have our live chat going on right now. We're also opening up the Q&A today to anything SEO related. So this is your chance to ask our expert today your biggest questions about SEO. Be sure to drop your questions down below in the live chat. If you're watching us on Facebook, you can also ask your questions there. Okay, so let's get started. Our guest today is your all-around digital marketing guy. If there's anyone that really knows anything about marketing and growth, it's Richard Wong. Hey, Richard.
Hello, hello. How's it going? Thanks for having me.
Good. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, absolutely. Super exciting and excited to hear everybody's questions.
So are we. So last year we talked with you on Google Analytics, and that was really insightful. So we're really excited about this one. For those who don't know you and are just joining us, tell us a bit about you and your background.
Yeah, so I've been a marketer for a long time. I would call myself more of a classically trained marketer. So I started my career off at the big CPG companies, so Procter & Gamble, Johnson & Johnson. Then I moved my way over to digital. So I worked at Google for a couple of years, and then I moved into the startup world for the past 5 years, where I was at companies like 500px or 500 Pixels, another company called #paid, and now I'm at LinkedIn, helping a lot of companies work on their growth plans.
And these days with the pandemic, a lot of those businesses are going through the same sort of changes that our businesses of people who are tuning in are today. They're relying a lot more on online traffic, that's for sure. From your experience, what's like the number one challenge when it comes to SEO?
Yeah, so especially as everything goes more to the world of online, and especially people have to get scrappy and really smart about how they work on everything. It's really around, I think, the keywords that you want to own from an organic perspective. So all of us want to add value to everybody. We all want to think about how are we adding different type of, like, how do we get visitors? How do we get users? And it really comes down to the type of keywords and the type of content that you want to own. What's realistic for you to own? What can you actually develop the right type of authority to be able to do so? And it's more than just like adding a couple blog posts with that keyword involved. It's a full-on comprehensive strategy, which is your off-page SEO. For those who are familiar, I'm going to talk probably more at an intermediate level of SEO, but off-page SEO connections so that you can actually develop partnerships with other groups that are in the space, both boosting both your page authority as well as your domain authority. But it really comes down to that keywords that you want to own.
Right. And I mean, there's so much when it comes to SEO that we can talk about, but in the short amount of time we've got today, we're going to kind of narrow in on keyword search because that's super important. So with that, I'm going to leave you. I'm going to hop out of here for a bit, and then I will come back a little later and we'll answer some of the audience questions.
Amazing. Thank you. Okay, so here's where I have a few different slides put together for you guys. I teach also a bunch of other type of local schools, teaching all sorts of different type of digital marketing tactics. So with that said, let me go through some of the key materials. So first off, I'm going to cover is like, what is search engine optimization, some of the factors that impact SEO. And then the next part, we'll go into a live demo of some keywords and some keyword planners around building a keywords list. How do you conduct keyword research, additional helpful tools, and as well as some takeaways for everybody. So relevance factors. those who are familiar, or at least somewhat familiar with the world of SEO, you'll know that relevancy is like a major big thing. If we want to go drill down into the core part of how Google first got created, or a lot of other search engines, it's really about the relevancy. They want to provide you with the most relevant information at the right time, the right place, and make the world's information universally accessible and useful. And so as part of that, when you're searching for any different type of keywords, they want to give you the type of results. If you're a visitor who's using their different type of search, they want to give you the right type of answers. And so the first part of this is the keywords. If you are searching for different type of places, let's call this best places to visit during COVID-friendly times, or what type of places are available, then you're going to want to use those specific type of keywords in order to make sure that you're reaching the right type of people. That the blog posts, the listicles, the video content that you're producing, that's going to be relevant to whatever you're searching for is present. So keywords, first and foremost, one of the big parts around relevancy. Next part of this is date and location. So they know, Google and a lot of the other type of search engines know that, well, the dates, information changes quite often. And information is also different from how it relates to different type of folks. And so if you are searching for a different type of content, they'll know that if there's between two different options, one that was written several years ago in another type of location, and another one that's written fairly recently and in a location that's like local to you, they know that it's going to be much more relevant, and therefore it's going to be much easier for them to be able to say, okay, we'll serve you this information up. For those that are, I'm based in Toronto, so if you're based in Toronto and you wrote something this past week, it's going to be highly relevant to probably a user like myself. Next part is behavioral metrics. So behavioral metrics itself are ones where when we look at the behavior, we want to get the proper right amount of signals from Google that be able to say that, okay, when we send traffic to this particular type of search engine result and this landing page, are they staying on here on a proper time? Do they bounce from here? Are they engaging with the different parts of the page? If you go onto a page and they don't stay on here, or the search engine results are not great and optimal, if it takes really long for a user to load that particular type of page, these are all bad parts of the experience. And so Google will therefore downrank your specific type of page and boost other ones that are giving a good amount of information. People are staying on here. It's a good experience on the whole. And then lastly, when it comes to the parts of relevance factor identifiers, it's the website structure. So the way of how all of these search engines operate is they have a lot of spiders and crawlable, not the creepy crawly spiders that we typically see sometimes in our decks and outside, but more so of ones that will crawl through your website. And once they start to pull in a lot of this information, you want to make sure that it's accessible and they can actually read this. So that means your H1, H2 headers, your alt tags, your meta descriptions, all of those you can see from Inspect Element if you go into right-click through your actual website. But even alt tags and meta descriptions are the things that when you start to type something into your search engine, it's the description of that website that comes over there. If you don't end up putting a description there, it'll just auto pull from any information that they see on your site. Those alt tags are things that when you describe your images, you describe any of your different type of media things that are on your site, those allow things to be described. And when you can describe your images, we can start to describe your videos of what this video is or what this image is. It's one, accessible for people who might be visually impaired or might be like, you're trying to make the world more informationally accessible, but it also makes it more accessible for these content crawlers to be able to figure out what type of information is sitting on this particular part of the site. These are technical features that just make it much easier to search and is accessible. The next part is around the value side. So if you think about the value, this is a side where it's the amount of traffic that your traffic receives. It's around contributing to the value of how the Google algorithm works. The more traffic that you're getting, the more of an authority that this ultimately takes into place. For those that want a bit of a history lesson around digital marketing and how at least Google got created, the two founders, Sergey Brin and Larry Page, were PhD students, and their overall main idea of how to create Google was, if you're trying to look at a domain expert within this entire space, it's the same type of thing. If you go into a room and ask somebody for who is an expert on this particular type of topic area, everybody points to the right type of person that's going to become the most relevant authority. And the one that has the most amount of traffic and people pointing traffic to them is usually the authority of that matter. It's a fairly easy rudimentary system in order to build the fundamentals of what started the algorithm. And so traffic is absolutely a big value identifier to create authority. User ratings, if your business has products or user ratings, that's another addition. If you guys haven't done so before, whether you have a physical location or just a business that's functioning online, if you haven't started something on Google My Business, it's something that's absolutely for free, that allows you to make sure that you're sharing the right type of business information with Google. Social shares, if you can get some additional people who are sharing content, directing traffic back to your overall site, those are additional ways to build up your off-page SEO, and as well as those navigation and those behavioral metrics as well. So bounce rates, time on site, a lot of those other areas. Happy users just mean that Google knows that these are happy users, that they're more than happy to send additional traffic to you in the future. In terms of authority, a couple parts. There's inbound links, there's backlinks. So these are a lot of the other parts that I mentioned to you of pointing to people different in the room. Traffic drivers, again, is another big part around authority. And then original content. Original content really speaks to the idea that, especially in today's day and age, there's a lot of people who are taking existing content, replicating them, reposting those type of content. Google punishes people, kind of like our high school English classes, for plagiarism. And so if you are plagiarizing your type of content, one, don't do that. Make sure that's original content. And so based on the original cache date, that's when they'll usually associate as who the original content poster was. But if you are doing so, say you have a blog that you're guest posting on another site, say you're posting something on your own website, you're posting on Medium, you're posting this on your LinkedIn, or any other type of page itself, what you'll typically want to do is link to say originally posted on, and linking back to that original the original part that you posted this on, just to make sure you don't get punished by the overall crawlable spiders itself. So that's what I have as some general overview of some additional parts. I see a couple comments in here coming in, and feel free to jump in with additional comments as before I jump into the keyword planner. And one of them, I see Evelyn mentions put dates on permalink or not. I usually default to saying yes. When you can put dates on here, it's helpful for not only the users, if you're thinking about from a how do we browse our internet, if we're looking for best flight deals or best credit card for travel enthusiasts, you'll want to know what the date is going to be on those links, because the dates, credit cards change, travel deals change, a lot of these different type of information changes. And if you just keep this as an evergreen, not purposeful, not long-term, then it's really hard for both your users to be able to understand whether this is relevant, but also the spiders as well as they're crawling through this. So great question. Keep those coming through. I don't see any additional questions coming in yet, so I will cycle into the keywords and keyword planner itself. Before I jump in, I'll cover a bunch of different type of top level, high level areas in terms of different type of keywords. First, we have generic. So these generic type of groups, they're typically like your age and income type of areas itself. Those could be applied to any of those different type of areas that we see. Branded keywords are usually the name of your business. So if you have a blog, you'll want to make sure that you even own your own blog keyword itself. Because if you're thinking about, if you're a highly competitive space, there's going to be other competitors that are going to try to win your own brand keywords as well. There's category keywords, and category keywords are going to be areas around the nature of like those general searches that apply. So it might be if This example that I use are contractors. So if you're doing a category, you might be affordable contractors. So you know that you're attracting specific people that are more in the nature of value conscious type of shoppers itself. And then you also have product. And product are going to be ones that are much more broader keywords within a specific area. Contextualizing this into more of a travel type of area. You might have your blog page as your branded key term. Your generic could just be something as generic as travel itself. But then you also have categories, which categories could be specific type of locations itself that you're traveling to, and then product, which could be specific type of travel trips. It might be, are you looking for more of a romantic getaway, or are you looking for more of an adventurous type of getaway itself? But those are just some of the ideas in terms of framing out what type of keywords would you really want to search for. Another big part in terms of keyword research, one common question that comes up is, where do you really start when it comes to owning some of these different type of keywords? One of the first parts that I'll usually mention is to start thinking in the put the shoes on of your audience. Is what would they be searching for? There's a lot of keywords tools that we can end up using, but at the very beginning stage of this is, let's think about, we're on our phones, we're on our laptops several hundred times a day. There's only a couple of those amounts of dates that really start to matter. And so if we're looking through all of these different type of keywords and searches that we could ultimately win and try to be able to win on, what would they be searching for? We don't just want to own random type of keywords like romantic getaway, but it might be more romantic getaway for an anniversary, somebody who loves this. And that's what we'll get into the idea of more long tail keywords itself, which is something that's super important. I've noticed that there are some additional questions that come up as well. Jane said, does it make sense to put keywords into photo descriptions? They aren't necessarily descriptive of the actual pictures. What do we recommend? I would say if the keyword is relevant to that actual image, then yes, include that. Contextualize why you're sharing this particular image. If you're sharing an image, don't just say picture of a beach, but say picture of a beach taken in this particular type of place. So try to contextualize this. Try to even equate this for what this particular, why is this image placed on this particular type of the page? And if you can connect that to the content that's on that page, that will ultimately be better for it. Just because you contextualize that image. So when you're searching the web, do some competitive research. Think around, okay, if you're creating some new content, if you are trying to own some additional new type of keywords, do those searches. Try those searches out. Try to see where you're stumbling on. If you're using both Google, if you're using YouTube, which YouTube is like the #2 search engine in the world itself, type those in, especially in the travel space. Look for what type of content are people engaging with. What are they looking for? Try different type of keywords that are both generic and have a lot larger, higher volume. And then also let's look at ones that are much more longer tail, and they might be something that's much more nuanced and more specific itself. And so once you can start to do some of that overall keyword research, you can start to create pages that target those different type of intents. One common mistake that I typically see some people do is trying to have one page that wins them all. Recommend against that. Try to break off your pages to own people at specific parts of the intent. If you think about anything, especially in the travel space, you'll have typically, before you even are ready to book, you'll be doing some additional research. And as you're going through all of those different massive research, from your top of funnel to your middle of funnel to your bottom of funnel itself and the marketing funnel itself, you want to think around what are the right type of aspects and what is the right type of content to be able to share to each different type of person. Cool. Any additional questions so far? Next part is, how do we pick the right ones? And so one of the first big tools that I recommend for most people getting started, as well as just working through this, is going into the keyword planner. So if you're getting into this, go to AdWords.google.com/keyword planner. If you haven't done this before, one hot tip that I'll share with you is the bit.ly/skip AdWords billing. This gets you to the legacy startup code that will allow you to skip entering your credit card information. So I'd recommend doing that. I'll just share my screen over here that I've already got this queued up. And this is ultimately what you should get when you're going to the keyword planner. When you go into the Google Ads platform, what you'll do is to get and navigate yourself to the keyword planner, you'll go into Tools and Setting and go into the keyword planner. And once you go to the keyword planner, you'll get this, which is 2 different options around either discovering new keywords or getting, or you can get search volumes and forecasts. I'm going to click on Discover Keywords. And so let's just type in our example of COVID-friendly travel destinations. Something like this. Type that in, get some results, knowing that, okay, this didn't actually work. Let's go travel destinations. Let's just keep this a little bit more broad, guys. Type this in. We're going to be searching for traffic specifically in Canada, English, and at Google. If we want to broaden this out, we could do this to worldwide. Or I can just do, let's do North America. Just add groups like the United States. We can also add in Mexico. Just for simplicity of this example, I'll just conclude these 3 countries. And so when we're looking at this, travel destinations, we can see that we have the average monthly searches of 1,000 to 10,000 amount of searches. The competition for this particular group is low. But as we start to go through some of these different type of areas, we'll see that there are some that are going to become a little bit higher level of competition. That just means that there's going to be a lot more different type of groups that are going to be trying to create content, but also bidding. For the purposes of SEO, we're going to ignore the ad impression shares and everything to the right, because that's mostly for search engine marketing itself. What we're going to be focusing on is the amount of monthly searches. So there's a lot of searches for Caribbean destinations, a lot of searches for best vacation spots, but let's go into something that's a little bit more nuanced. So best holiday destinations. So we can see that there's some nuances between vacation versus holiday. There's also some additional, if we go down even further around here, places to visit in October. So this is going to be a lot lower, but the amount of competition for this could be a lot less. And so one series that you guys might want to do is maybe different type of places to visit in different periods of different type of months itself. That could just be some additional ways to get started. Once you start to do this, you can right click on some of these different type of areas, add this to an overall plan, and then that produces your overall first basis of a keyword pyramid that you'll start to want to own. What you'll also see over here is the overall keyword planner has given us some additional areas for us to start to think about. So maybe it's not necessarily October. Maybe it's around the idea that it's dream destinations. They'll talk about other type of brands. Could be Lonely Planet. It could be Lake Tahoe. But they would also say, here's some additional months that typically get some more traffic. Maybe you want to focus on seasons and some of the different type of seasons that come in here. And then as well as maybe you want to add in a year, and just so that you can start to localize this towards a specific type of year. So there's a whole bunch of different ways. Really recommend going into the keyword planner initially to start with. A couple other tools that I would recommend as well is something called Moz. Moz Bar, which is a Chrome add-on. It allows you to be able to see the overall domain authority and seeing other type of groups to partner up with. Moz is probably one of the best type of tools for anybody who's an SEO or more of a search expert, because what they'll just show you is the Open Site Explorer, where you can start to see what are different type of sites that might be owning this particular type of keyword. Write some partnerships, especially for a lot of you guys who might be bloggers, reaching out to those different type of groups, offering a guest post or some sort of partnership itself. If you guys are pitching your different type of services, maybe reaching out to those folks and be able to work some overall relationships saying, I might be an expert, or I'm currently have a big series on the Galapagos Islands, for an example, and you can end up sharing something like that. Seeing some more questions pop in here, so I'm just going to answer try to tackle those. Natalie says, do you have any tips for covering a destination or topic with a lot of competition? because sometimes you still want to write about Paris. Yes, I love Paris, and I assume you're talking about Paris, France, and not Paris, Ontario, although definitely shout out to Paris, Ontario. But in terms of some of those nuances, if something like Paris is something that you really care about, let's talk about Paris travel. Paris, and then let's do travel results, and let's get some ideas. So you don't want to just use the keyword of Paris, but what we might want to do is, well, let's look at, actually, let's do Paris travel. Add that as a keyword, and let's start seeing some of the other different type of ideas. So Paris travel, we get around 1 to 10K amount of searches, but let's go down a little bit further. Let's think about some of the different areas that we could win on. So maybe even Rick Steves, which we know is a great travel guide. Maybe you do the top 10 things that you found that Rick is left out on the Rick Steves Paris guide itself. People are like, okay, great. I don't necessarily want to always go to the super touristy places, so maybe I want to go find some of the off-beaten path type of areas for you to win on. Maybe the type of traveler that you're trying to own is less of the jumping onto a tour bus, but more so, let's find some of the hidden gems in each of those different type of cities. Own a specific niche and find those specific areas out. And so look to much further down this overall list, maybe some of the must-see places. Maybe it's around the Black Paris tour. I'm not sure exactly what that goes into, but look at these different type of keywords and start thinking about how do we own some of those different groups. Paris travel will definitely be owned by some of the big online travel agencies. So what we have to do is get smart and look at the other type of keywords that some of those bigger players might not necessarily be looking at right away. So I hope that answers your question. Vicky, what other free and simple to use tools can you recommend? Not Google AdWords Keyword Planner for finding search numbers. In terms of search numbers, like Google Ads is probably some of the best areas to get an accurate idea in terms of searches. I would recommend Moz as well as another like good general easy to use type of tool itself. Those are probably the two ones that I'd recommend that are simple, free, easy to use. Moz, I will tell you it's a freemium type of area, so there are obviously paid parts that they will ask you and try to encourage you to use. If you want to use some additional more aspects, you could also do Screaming Frog. There's a couple other type of bigger tools itself. Those tend to be a little bit more complicated, and so I'd usually recommend that against from somebody who might be just a beginner working through this. As well as one other big handy tool is for any of you guys who are currently running your site, make sure that you have that set up on Google Search Console. That will give you the amount of queries that are coming into your website and showing you all the different type of keywords that are coming in. Okay, I see Margarita's. Could you just put that bit.ly URL again? Yes, let me cycle back over here. It is bit.ly/skip AdWords billing. So I'll keep that over here for now, and I will let some additional people, let's see, some additional questions that came in yeah, so I see Natalie, that was the same question in terms of like wanting to write about Paris, own what the Paris part of this is. Maybe there are, I think there's a lot of generic content that goes out. I think the big opportunity area, and especially in the travel space, as someone who's also a big travel enthusiast, is the different type of travelers. And so if you want to write a niche for people who are young professionals, that's definitely one different type of niche than the type of Paris trip that I would send my parents on, which is a very different type of part where I'd send for my friends who are traveling with kids. So the more niche and the more audience specific areas that you can develop, I think the better. And one part that I know in terms of copywriting is just make this as humanistic as possible versus saying something like in terms of a copywriting exercise versus saying like 10 things that you might miss on of visiting your next trip to Paris. Humanize this. It's like how like the areas that as a like a parent's traveling with a kid that you need to visit in Paris. Make this much more so that the audience members who are seeing that specific title, blog post, want to share that out, can really resonate with that piece of content. Okay. Tomas from Poland says, is it possible to cover private tours in Poland and tours in certain cities, Berlin, Warsaw, on one page? So the bit.ly is not working. Let me just pull this up for you guys. bit.ly, skip AdWords billing itself. It should. I will drop this into, let me share this with Christina. This is what the AdWords should be giving you. This is what the bit.ly sends to. So Christine, if you want to share that out, that might help as well. Thank you. So that should get you through the skip keywords, like the actual planning. I made the mistake of accidentally connecting my credit card back in the day, racked up a couple $1,000s of charges. Not something that you want to experience yourself if you're just testing this out. In terms of Tomas's question, in terms of is it possible to cover tours on a bunch of different cities on one page, I think you really have to think around what are you trying to do here. So if the main action that you want people to do on that specific type of page is like to navigate all different types of searches, and that will guide you to either Berlin, Poznan, Warsaw, then I think that's great. I think if you're trying to guide people towards like a specific and have this page own Berlin, own Warsaw, or own Poznan, then I think you want to be able to separate those out. It's ultimately around page authority. It's around the nature of, are you going to become the keyword expert on that specific type of page itself? And so sometimes recommending to split those out might work better for you. Margarita, if you rank for a particular phrase, do you continue using a variation of that phrase in other posts? Not sure how to take advantage of that ranking. If you are owning that specific phrase itself, one, defend. To defend your overall keyword amount of traffic. Remember, other people are going to be gunning for that. And it's around keeping that content current, keeping it relevant, updating that on an ongoing basis. So you'll want to make sure that you're consistently giving the most amount of relevant information on that specific type of phrase itself. In terms of other variations, if you want to expand that, what you could typically do is, let's say you're doing this for families, family travelers. If you want to do another group around young professionals, you can say this is your series of travelers, and then link that original page that you already know is performing well into another page that also might own a synonymous or like a related type of keyword itself. But make sure you play defense so you continue to win that. Because I think that's going to become something that's going to be important. But if you want to expand that additional type of phrase, I think it depends on each of the different type of keywords. But look at opportunities of, do you expand that because it's actually of the same amount of relevant information, same audience, or is this going to be a separate audience that you want to split this out into another type of page itself? Okay. I also saw a few other questions before. I can also jump into those. I see Larissa from in Philadelphia. Is it useful to have categories in your post URLs for SEO purposes? Yes, that is a great point itself. So in terms of overall categories and making sure that you put those keywords in the actual post URL, but the post URL, the names that you end up using within there are also going to be part of the overall keyword search. So that's part of structure. Think of it like similar to your H1, your H2, any of your alt tags. Your also URL is also a big part of that overall group. But even categorizing them into different type of folders itself helps you understand where to navigate that information. On the aggregate, think of this as an overall framework for keywords, generic, more specific. Get a good combination between those two. Also know that people are going to be in different stages of the funnel, depending on the type of keyword that they use. For an example, shoes, size 12 Nike runners, or shoes on sale in Nike are going to be, shoes are just going to be fairly generic. Size 12 Nike runners are going to be something that's in the middle, and shoes on sale in Seattle are going to be much more specific, much lower amount of search traffic, but something that's much more higher likely to be able to convert itself. Same type of rules apply when it comes to the travel industry. So I know there's a few other type of areas in terms of the easiest parts, just to make sure that we go over those again. It's like that organic report within the Google Analytics. If you guys haven't done so already, make sure you follow up with Christina to make sure you remember how to do Google Analytics, and maybe we'll throw another type of workshop together. The SEO query report also ties that in with overall Google Search Console, and making sure that you understand what type of queries are coming in from a search area. And then the Moz Chrome extension. That'll help you see both that page and domain authority, but also other type of keywords and other type of authorities within specific type of keywords itself. A couple more keywords. I know we want to leave around at least 10, 15 minutes available for Q&A. So keep those Q&As coming in. But some of the major takeaways as just our flash part of SEO is it's a culmination of a lot of those organic tactics used both on and off a website itself. So just because you're managing a site, remember that doesn't end there. Other type of off-page tactics itself, whether it's commenting on blog posts, forums, think of areas like the Quoras, the Reddits, the other type of pages itself. If you're on those different type of forums, especially like the TripAdvisors or other bigger forums, writing in useful information that ultimately links to your overall site that get people to click on those overall pages and go to your site is super helpful as well. That's the off-page SEO type of strategies. The SERP filters, it's going to give the most relevant search results to any user. So while you might be searching for this and seeing that you're popping up because your own information is going to be relevant to you, you'll want to do the same type of thing for other type of users itself. And so have friends, ask them to search for different type of keywords. Those are all handy, easy ways for you to be able to see how you're popping up in your different type of search engine results page. And lastly, keywords have a healthy mix of both generic and long tail. Make sure you're balancing out all of these different type of search results. Let's make sure that you're getting things that are going to be competitive, that we aspire to win some of those big generic type of keywords, but also let's make sure that we win on some of the defense around winning some of those long tail keywords to make sure that we're getting a good mix of all of those. So jumping into some of the more questions, if we want to rank to be the authority, though, if you want to rank to be the authority, though, don't you end up competing with yourself for the same or very similar keywords on your different posts all under one domain? That's a great point from Mikhail. You don't want to necessarily cannibalize your overall traffic from any particular keyword. That's one part where the Google Search Console, as well as your Google Analytics, will come into handy parts. If you are trying to win a keyword, use that keyword specifically for the page that you want to optimize towards. So that's why you have a mixture. When you have that overall larger list, I'll tell you that a lot of the groups that I try to chat with and work with will have thousands, if not tens of thousands of different type of keywords that they'll want to own. Develop that, own it. That one page will not own all 1,000+ type of keywords. Those one page will own maybe a couple of those keywords at most. And so what you'll want to do is you'll want to start to create additional type of content. Remembering that as you're creating content, you'll want to create content that's also going to become timely, relevant, and going to be topical for most people. And so as a result of that, you'll want to make sure that there's a healthy level of some cannibalization that's going ahead, because ultimately what that does is it helps your site keep as a domain expert. But if you have an absolute knockout guide, travel guide, maybe a tool for any different type of travelers that you just want to always make sure that you keep that going on, don't use any of your other type of pages to try to cannibalize some of your keywords. So make sure that you use each page to own a specific type of keyword itself. And then Evelyn, how long can a keyword be? Your site is about New York City. Should your keyword be NYC or New York City? Plus added words like tours or museum. Great point. What you could do is you could search for what is the search volume for NYC versus New York City, specifically within the realm of travel. And those are some additional type of great tools for you to be able to think about. I would also recommend using something like Google Trends itself. And so that's Google Trends is a great way for you to be able to type in things like NYC versus New York City. If it's something that's like a little bit more longer tail, you'll see what the type of search volumes, and some things will ebbs and flow between those two. But in terms of keywords, how long should it be? It can be as long as you want. What you can see from when I typed in something like Paris travel or travel destinations, you can see some of those keywords were like best places to travel to in 2019, a much longer type of keyword, even though it's a keyword phrase, but that's something that you can absolutely own. So type those in, get some of those search volumes, get some of those estimates, and those are going to be a great way for you to get started. Some of the additional questions I knew came through are how do these two things affect SEO ranking? One, hosting speed, not the site speed, but the hosting speed, how good the servers are. As you've heard, that hosting alone can affect your SEO ranking. And then two, description for images. I think we covered under the description for images, super important, helps all of the SEO spiders crawl and understand your site. But I think in terms of a hosting speed, this is going to be around the amount of downtime. So a lot of sites, if you are hosting something on a very like rudimentary level, say you're doing it on premises, so you're hosting it from like a computer that you have in your house versus hosting it on one of the cloud servers, whether it's the AWS, Google, like Microsoft, Azure, any of those other groups like that. It's around downtime. And so you'll want to make sure that not only the site speed is efficient, but the actual hosting experience, because all of this stuff is all connected, that you're giving people a good experience. If you have a lot of downtime, let's say you accidentally, one of your family members or friends accidentally kicks the hosting computer that you're hosting your website on and it goes down, well, the search engines aren't going to really appreciate that, because they don't want to send information and visitors to your site if it's not functioning properly. So as a result of that, sometimes some of those cloud hosting servers can be really relevant and really useful that way. Let me see. Other keywords that I don't think we've answered. I've heard of one, which is what is one of the most common issues that people end up like what's common myth or error that people make when it comes to SEO. I will warn all of you guys, please, please, please be careful when there's random SEO quote unquote experts who are pitching you information to win the SEO game that they've cracked the code. Google updates their search algorithms over 1,000 times every year. And so that means that there's multiple iterations and changes that happen every single day. So no one has cracked the code. And even if that code is cracked, like it changes all the time. So don't necessarily do that. You'll get punished by trying to also fake this. I've had people who pitched me when I was running my startups to be part of a guest posting network. So they will write a post and they'll link to other type of posts itself, and they'll try to create like a fake, think of like Instagram, like those people who get together and they'll like and comment and try to boost each other's type of algorithms. If you try to play algorithm games with Google or any of these other type of search engines, you'll get punished. And I've seen instances where this has happened to a few other type of companies that have tried to do so. You get punished by Google. You essentially get on the like not approved list, and you essentially put in the penalty box. And if you think around the realm of, I saw another question around like organic search can be like over 50%, and oftentimes is a big portion of your overall search traffic. If you have that entire traffic pull away, it can almost shut down a company, which I think it actually did shut down one of the companies that I knew of, a colleague of mine. And so be careful, tread carefully, don't try to game the system. Remember old school days of people putting like on a black text, they put a bunch of black background and trying to hide a bunch of keywords. Like, don't do that. Those spiders are much smarter than any of us trying to game the system that way. So some additional questions that came in. Great info. Thanks, Evelyn. If I go back to publish posts to change keywords from what you've learned here, will you get punished by Google? No, not necessarily. If you post this as an updated, so you can say updated with, like updated by, and doing that, you're not necessarily gaming the system as long as it's relevant and it's going to be like relevant information. Don't try to game the system. Try to provide good information to your visitors coming into your website. That's the main principle to live by. And so let's see some additional questions. As an airline, if I have specific pages per destination or route, what is the best way to increase ranking for specific pages? Rather than the vast majority of existing pages, can you make them stand out in an organic channel? That seems really specific itself, but as an aggregate, remember for airlines, there's a bunch of different purposes. If you're saying starting a new route or something like this, have a destination page. Like, why do people want to visit this particular page? Feature that. The best places to travel to. Like if you can become also, in addition to a performance channel of like booking flights and all that stuff, but also become a content channel where people actually are attracted and come to your site for specific type of information, that will naturally boost your organic ratings itself. So think about that. It might be a little bit more nuanced, so you might have to chat about this with your team or take this offline, or you can try to you can either DM me on, like, I know we're coming close to time. I'm still going to be on here for a little bit more time, but like you can hit me up on Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, any of those groups like that. Happy to try to answer some of your questions. Joe, is there a difference between travel Paris and travel to Paris? Great question. There are small nuances. What I've been doing when I'm doing some of the posts is I'm doing a broad match modifier. So a broad modifier means that like it can be any like little conjunction type of words itself that join this up. That's what I'm using when I'm searching for this. But when you guys are searching for this specifically, if you saw the keyword planner, you saw those get ideas and then get search volumes. Type in that exact match. So that put travel to Paris in quotation marks and put travel Paris in quotation marks, and you'll see the different search volumes of that specific type of keyword itself. You'll want to use the one with the higher amount of volume. Joe from Seattle, earlier on you mentioned location. If you're a travel company selling international tours, does your local city location matter? Good point. It matters to a degree. It's going to be mostly about the user behavior. So if your users are behaving in a way where like doesn't necessarily matter where you're traveling or where you're traveling from, but if the users in that specific type of area are resonating with the content in that specific area that you're posting it in, then hopefully it'll continue other type of users in that area. If you're understanding my nuances correctly. You don't have to have locations and post it from everywhere in the world, but it's mostly around, are users in that specific area finding your content useful? Ursula, host recommendations. Why choose one over another apart from price? I'm going to raise my hand saying, not an expert in hosting and server hostings. If you are interested in that, take that to the Travel Massive community. I assume that you can have a great conversation with a lot of other folks there. I've worked clearly at some of those, so I'm also going to try to like take my bias hat off. But I think some of the major big players itself are probably the more reliable ones. But again, I'm going to defer to the overall community for what serves you guys best. Larissa, starting a new niche site, what do you recommend indexing it in Google to start in the queue for keywords? How much content do you need to be on the site before you index it? You can't really submit your site for being indexed itself. It'll just automatically start to crawl itself. And so one, you'll just naturally, hopefully get that. Recommendations in terms of strategies in order to get the ball rolling is trying to own like those longer tail keywords that you see are getting getting volume, but there's not a ton of competition. I recommend deferring to something like that. The other part that I'd also recommend is while paid and organic are two separate divisions and the two separate algorithms that how they start to work, if you do and your paid activity should not have any implication on your organic, with the exception of the more traffic that you drive to your site, and if it's a strong performing content, that'll naturally start to get the motions running because you'll actually get user behavior on your site and start to get some additional momentum that way. So that's on that front. I think I answered most of the questions around here. One last question, I guess, is if you own a tour operator, how useful is it really in terms of SEO ranking to also have a blog? Great question. If you're a tour operator, you have to stand out against a lot of the other type of tour operators. I assume you're not the only tour operator in your specific space. And so if you're trying to differentiate yourself, if you're trying to win the overall SEO ranking, one, you'll want to make sure that the actual performance parts of your page are getting the amount of traffic when people are searching for like travel deals and some more specific like longer tail bottom of funnel type of activity. But if people are doing research, that's one of the aspects that people are going to look for. Are you an expert in this particular space? Are you going to naturally come up on the overall search engine results page when people are looking for information? Are you going to be one of the other groups? Because if another tour operator is offering you information that's going to be relevant for that specific type of tour area, then they're probably going to win the ultimate battle itself. And because that difference of winning and losing is such a big difference itself, it's usually most of the time worth it to be able to develop your overall blog that way. And then Jane says, do you have any tips for optimizing a blog which combines national and international travel with local travel? What's on guides? Does it matter? A skewed emphasis on local area so that the category contains more content than other categories? Would it be better to separate it out into two blogs? Good point. Lots of things there. I'd say on the aggregate, separate those pages out when it makes sense. But in terms of two separate blogs versus one blog, one good general principle to think about is for some of the biggest players in the travel space. For example, let's think about Expedia. Does Expedia have a separate page for trips to Asia versus trips to Europe versus trips to North America, or is it all under one? It's all under one, and that's primarily because of domain authority. Develop your expertise for, especially I think most of us who are in this group, it's in the community, develop your expertise under one main channel itself, and then start to create different type of pages that are going to be more relevant towards national travel versus like domestic travel versus international travel, and then as well as some of those different local areas itself. Those could be separated on those separate pages, and you can do those based on an overall hierarchy itself. Especially some of those guides, like think of the groups that have been major players in the space, like the Rick Steves, like the Lonely Planets, like a lot of those other groups itself. What are some of the aspects that we can learn from them? And Jane, do follow versus no follow links. Does Google penalize you for those do follow links? Should all your links be no follow, even if it's a non-sponsored post? This is a tricky part to really think around. You'll want to make sure that you're playing ball essentially with some of the other type of pages itself. So for those who are less familiar, you can essentially tell Google that should you send the authority to other type of pages, I would generally say do so when it makes sense. If you actually think that this is an authority that you're sending people to, then you should be like linking them to specific areas. So for example, if it's like a tourism board, they are probably an expert in that specific space. And so what you're doing is you're establishing that, hey, this is who I think is actually a reputable site that actually is an authority in this type of matter. So you should actually share that because that naturally makes sense. Think of it as like kind of your confidence in that other type of page as an authority in that specific matter. That's kind of the general principle to live by. But be careful with like adding too many no follow links just because like you're just not playing ball with other type of people. It's a community. You're trying to make the internet useful. If they are an actual expert in that specific type of space, then share that out with them. So I know we're just closing in on time. I wanted to invite Christina just in case she wants to come back on and answer anything that she might end up having for us.
Hey, Richard, that was really great. I'm trying to like take it all in. It was a lot of information. Some really great tips. We did have one from Jane who says, stupid question. Jane, there's no stupid questions here, okay? How do I find out my ranking for a specific post or page?
Definitely not a stupid question. And this answer changes almost every single day. You don't really see your ranking for that specific post or page because the rankings are dependent on each person and each device, right? How you'll rank on your phone is going to be different than how you rank on your desktop. And it's going to rank differently for when I search for you or if Christina searches for you as well. So don't really think about it from how do you rank, but more so how much traffic are you getting from that specific type of keyword? And I think that's going to be more of the nuance that you want to start to measure. And is it true that any company with more domain authority, DA, than you is going to knock you out of the competition, regardless of how good your content is? Blog TO can write 500 words with next to no info, and they'll always beat you to those keywords. Tricky. They are kind of like those bigger sites are kind of like the big bullies in the entire system itself. You get smart with that. In addition to you creating your own posts, get other groups to link to you. It's also one of those aspects. Domain authority does play a big factor into this, but I think if you start to own that specific type of keyword and you become an expert type of space itself, that should persevere. The hard part is, like, for an example, like if you discover the coolest new restaurant, but then like a big player comes in here and says like, we just found the coolest new restaurant, you'll never believe what you figured out. Like, the hard part is you don't have that much authority over that specific type of keyword. That's the hard part around this, and the best way for a lot of smaller blogs to be able to band together is to have a network with each other and make sure that you boost each other up, and also pressure the bigger players to give you the original credit to the people who discovered it first or who wrote about that, especially if they're replicating and taking your existing content. That's part of the original reason why they punish people who are taking content from other players and just reposting it on their site. But yeah, it is hard. It's tricky.
One of the earlier you mentioned about date and relevancy. And so a lot of us think obviously date is important, and historical pages and having a long website that you've had for years, and that plays into it. But what about posts that they're old posts, but you still want to update them because you said it's good to have relevant updated pages? Do you go in and update it and then change the date, or what do you do with that?
Yeah, so definitely that exact strategy for groups that are posting really well. As an example of this, one of the like super competitive keywords that I usually share in some of my classes is like, look for best smartphone. If you Google best smartphone, there's going to be so many different type of articles that people are sharing that are trying to win what the best, and you're going to see a bunch of like cell phone ratings. They're going to try to compare every single cell phone. Cell phones come out, new cell phones come out all the time. And so these groups that are winning the top of the searches are updating that page constantly with information. And so in order for you to do that on competitive keyword searches like that, let's take a page from their book and make sure that we keep those keywords updated and keep those pages up to date.
And you wouldn't delete the post and create a new one. You would just update it, and then you can change the date, and you won't get penalized for changing the date.
Exactly.
Okay.
And if you ever want to see some of your old stuff and people want to see old things, you can always use the Wayback Playback internet time machine.
And you raised a good point about earlier, like, think like a consumer, right? Like, go into Google and search what you think people would be searching. At the end of the day, we're also consumers and we're also travelers. So how would you search for something? And that is generally likely going to be the way other people search too, right?
Exactly.
Okay. Let's see if there's any other questions here. So Tara, if you research for a blog post, will it hurt the post to list and link your sources at the bottom if they're great for other people to check out and you find them helpful for your readers?
I think that's awesome. I think that's great.
Okay.
Especially if you are like adding quotes or adding information that Google will say like, hey, this was actually originally on this particular type of page itself. Linking to them, giving them credit. It's just like, it's the right thing to do.
And what about placement about these links? Do you think that if you place the links further down, it's better than placing them further up?
So again, we're talking about nuances here. And also one thing to caveat is like, while I've worked at Google and I've been in this space, I don't know I don't know the code because like the code's probably changed a ton of times. I don't personally think that where you place some of those links matter as much, to be honest. When I'm usually cross-posting different type of blog posts, I usually say it's originally posted on like Medium or originally posted on LinkedIn via this, and then go into the content just so that when the spiders are crawling through this, they'll know that, okay, well, this was originally posted on here. If it's about source material, sometimes tucking it at the end sometimes matters, or even within the text itself. But I haven't really seen that add a significant difference itself.
Okay. And Joe is asking a question about his blog. He's running a brand new website due to launch. I have 20 blog posts. Do I load all 20 and then launch the website, or time release the posts on a schedule?
Oh boy.
Great question.
Great question. If you already have a lot of the blog posts created, I'm inclined to release them all at once. On social, it's a different story. On social, you want to drip those out and start to promote your posts at different types of times. But think of this almost like going into a store. If you're opening up a new store, do you only want to release one part of your store at a time, like one department or one shelf at a time? Or would you rather create an environment where, okay, I can go to your website and there's just a lot of information here. Awesome. Amazing. That to me sounds like a lot more of a natural type of fit. And so if I would walk into a store and I only saw there's only one shelf full of goods, I'd be like, oh, this isn't really open yet. This isn't really a thing. But if I go in there and it's actually filled with a lot of other type of material, then I think it naturally makes sense. On social, when you're promoting this, you wouldn't want to promote all 20 of your posts all at the same time. You'd want to like drip that out over time, but you can have it already on your site already. And so that's what I'd recommend.
Okay. So I'm just checking here the chat to see if there's any other final questions. We're just about done here. I guess I have a question for you. I have two for you. Richard, where can people find you if they want more information?
Yeah, if you want to find me for some more information, I teach classes when I'm not teaching with you guys at Travel Massive for specific type of workshops. I teach at University of Toronto, and I also teach at another school called Grow Class. So those are two places that I currently teach at, but I'm also available on Twitter. I usually post more of my marketing related stuff on Twitter and LinkedIn. I post more of my own personal stuff on Instagram, but feel free to follow me, DM me, ask me different type of questions itself. I've been a little bit busy, so I've been posting less marketing content, but always happy to answer any different type of questions that come up.
And I just threw your LinkedIn there because you worked at LinkedIn, so we've got to do that, right?
Thank you, everyone. Cool.
Final question, and maybe this is the most important question of the day. When this lockdown is all over, are you going to travel anywhere? Where's the first place you're going to go?
I am so craving to do some travel. I've had a bunch of friends like weddings and bachelor parties and other groups like that all delayed. So definitely a whole roster of travel that's oriented. I'm excited to see some of those travel deals that come out, especially ones that are offering the 2-for-1 type of deals to some amazing places that I haven't traveled to. On my list in particular for me personally is a Southeast Asia trip. Just absolutely love that area. So if anyone has any recommendations, please send them my way.
Yeah, I highly recommend Thailand. I love it there. You can't really get tired of the beaches and the food and all that. Awesome. I think we're just about done today. There's no other questions. Thanks for everybody for tuning in. Thank you, Richard, for your time today and letting us sort of tap into your brain and your marketing insight.
Yeah.
Thanks to everyone for watching. Don't forget, if you missed anything on the webinar today, any links, any tips or tools that Richard mentioned, you can go back and rewatch this webinar afterwards. And any of the past webinars from our global chapters around the world, they're always available on the Travel Massive website. You can just go there, rewatch them anytime you like. We're also looking for show ideas for future shows. So if you have a webinar idea, a skill that you want to learn, if you want to be a guest speaker, we're always looking for ideas. Please shoot us an email. I'll leave that in the live chat box below. If you have additional questions, you can include those and we'll try to answer them after the show as well through email. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Richard.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.